Hi, this is my voice. I started doing this series as like a way to flex my muscles and get some experience with editing, because that's kind of what I'm doing in college right now. If there's anything weird in these, it's probably something specific that I wanted to use in school. Like for instance, right here, this effect, where I had this, I actually used a very similar effect in a project for another class. And this was just kind of me playing around with the editing program in order to try and figure out how to use it. This is an image plane and a renderer. Image plane is where the actual effect happens, and renderer makes it actually work. It's not really anything like super high quality, but it allowed me to do something for school that was very interesting looking. Even if it didn't look good in this video, it looked good there. Because when I first started making these, I didn't care how they looked. I was just kind of doing them for the sake of doing them, and people liked them, and that was cool, but they were just kind of there for me. I think the point in which I started like getting super into it was chapter 5, and I think it kind of shows. Actually, before I get into that, the first thing I want to talk about is how I organize my stuff. I fully admit my system's probably pretty bad compared to a lot of people's, but having a system for organizing things is super helpful. I seriously recommend just putting together a system that works with your brain. Don't necessarily use the one I have, just make one that works for you. Like for instance, I've never been super consistent with how I name my files. I usually just use the default download name, but I have them all in certain folders. I started actually putting the music in the host file, but that's just kind of how it works for me. I have all my folders separated. This is where I put my output videos. This is where all the raw footage is. You can actually see this is currently being filmed here. This is where the stuff for the intros go in, and this is where all the rest of them are stored. Now, my system is very sloppy, and there's a lot of mistakes that get made, like in chapter 13. As you can see right here, this thing, the way I do it is I move everything to an external hard drive, and this one I forgot to move to an external hard drive, so when I went to relink it, it wasn't there, and it's not there anymore. But since I'm done with the chapter, it doesn't really matter. The main reason I have all of the stuff working off of one file is so that if I need an effect or something, I can just go to that chapter and pull it from there. Like for instance, if I wanted to use this explosion again and I just wanted to keep it at this size or whatever, I could just copy and paste it from this chapter to that one. Or if I wanted to reuse like this voice clip, I could copy and paste it into here. One of the first things I established with this episode, or with this original chapter, was using the microphones. This is actually the only time I think in the entire series where I used a tilted one. I don't know why I did. It doesn't look good. There are some shorthands that make it very easy to establish like who's talking. Like if you zoom in on them, you don't need to use the microphone since they're the only ones on the screen. I don't necessarily use the microphone when I have Senator Oswin speaking or Palpatine with Irk, because generally people will pick up on that. I still will sometimes, since people may not get the inside joke, but yeah. I think that's all for chapter 1 that I wanted to go over. Green screen, right? So green screening is something that I use a lot. It's something that most people who edit are very familiar with. It's very easy to do. As long as you have the program. For instance, with DaVinci, you just go into the Fusion tab, go into Tools, Mate, Delta Keyer, drag and drop that, and then it looks pretty good. I think chapter 3 was when I started to find my footing when editing these. This is the first chapter that I had where it just felt like I was constantly repeating the same joke, and I had to fix that. And the way I went about that was, I'll explain it in a minute. First, this is the first one that has like an intro sequence, because the song has an intro sequence, and I kind of wanted to put something a little fancier together than just, you know, a copy-pasted green screen thing. So I did this. This was my first instance of making fun of the boss's name, and I didn't think that was going to be a running theme, but all the bosses have just the dumbest names. And then I did a generic green screen fight thing anyways, so screw me. So one of the big things on this one I realized was I'm not doing anything special for any of these, and it's getting kind of repetitive and boring to edit. I literally cut out like half of this map and just left it black because showing Marcus kill 30 people wouldn't have been fun to edit and I assume watch. This is where I was like, okay, I need to do something different with, I can't just show combat all the time. Maybe I can show some other stuff happening on the map. So I showed Eliwood using a Volnegary. But I think the more I did it, the more I tried to focus on stuff that isn't combat, because, let's be honest, it gets kind of dull if it's the same thing over and over again. So for chapter 4, I kind of made this one really short intentionally. because there was one joke that I was focused on when I was making it, and that was having Oswin be Senator Armstrong, just absolutely tanking the entirety of the enemies. Because when I was playing this, that was the only thing I could think of. I was just like, wow, Oswin is just soloing the map. I think the main challenge with editing this one, it doesn't come across in the timeline, because I like to, when I'm repeating frames or whatnot, I like to make it into a compound clip so I can like move it around more easily. But for Elliewood, it's 3, for Hector, it's 2 different PNG images that I photoshopped, or I put together, that have them moving the arms over the instruments. The instruments are part of the base image, and I edited them together with the beat of the song. Chapter 5 is when I started being like happy with how these were turning out. This is when I started putting little individual bits inside of the episode, like the bit with the Whitest Kids You Know sketch, condensed down to like 30 seconds. This is also the chapter that I figured that trying to focus on everything happening at the map at once is not a good idea. I had Oswin and Hector on one side. I had everyone else trying to fend off the flyers from Rolinius. And I noticed when I was trying to edit this that nothing really happened on the front lines with Oswin and Hector. They just kind of juggernauted through without any real issues. And all the actual tense combat and like units potentially dying happened around trying to defend Merlinius from the Pegasus Knights. So that's kind of what I tried to focus on for the majority of the video. I think it was better for it. Then I also wanted... Oh, right! Before I go on to that. Rebecca dying. I think I only saw one person comment on it, so I'm just gonna assume people didn't notice. I didn't linger on it because I don't like, it feels like I feel like I'm telling on myself now. I didn't linger on this, but the Pegasus Knight, if you didn't notice, they crit. And it kind of implies that the crit is what killed Rebecca. But the Pegasus Knight absolutely had lethal on her the entire time. I just dispositioned her. Everyone was like, oh, what an unfortunate crit. And I was like, yeah, what an unfortunate crit. But yeah, there's a reason why when I want to show Oswin fighting, I just cut to a montage of 30 enemies dinking off of him. Because creating individual clips for that, it's not fun to do, and it would get boring to watch after a while. Like the novelty of, hey, look, this unit is literally invincible. It gets old. But for this effect, I wanted to like show that stuff was still happening on the map, and I wanted to transition to the end. So I panned the audio to the right because that's where they were on the map, respective to where Oswin was. Replayed the clip.
I'm David Henry from Wizards of Waverly Place, and you're watching Disney Channel.
Chapter 6 was actually the most fun chapter to edit because everything happened in one tiny condensed space. The less the camera moves, the easier it is to do sneaky edits and to transition really smoothly. Just for instance, I think my favorite cut was, it was here. It goes to player phase, and then it just has Hector immediately move. Because when I do my usual thing of like looking around the map, seeing what my options are, I end up moving the map a little bit, and then cuts like this don't really work. But with this map being so small, I could just cut out the part with me deliberating on how I want to go about this and just kind of show Hector doing his thing. Because there's probably like a 7-minute period between this clip and this clip of me just thinking about how I like checking stats, checking ranges, thinking about how I want to go about this turn. This is also, I want to talk about this in case you're ever editing this specific game and want to do something like this. For the longest time, I had it zoom in and zoom out like this on the map. I think the pacing of these videos got infinitely better when I just started instantly cutting to the fight. Like this zoom in thing is fine for a transition in game, but I think it takes way too long for a video that's supposed to be a minute long. This is also when I started using little hit sound effects, like right here, it's the Minecraft bow one. And when I originally used the bonks and the slaps and the other stuff, I would use them instead of the audio clips, but I think it adds a lot to the experience if you use both. Even if it is a bigger pain to edit, and it means you have to draw more clips, I think it's absolutely worth it when it comes to the actual output. I should also go ahead and say, if you're editing, if you're like new to editing, constantly save. Save. Every edit, every teensy tiny edit, you save. You save constantly. Because what's gonna happen if you don't is you're going to like go through a 30-minute editing spree. You're going to forget to save, and then it's going to crash, and you're going to lose everything. It will happen. It's not an if. I don't care if you have the best computer in the world. It'll happen eventually. It'll get you when you're least expecting it. So save. Okay, timeline 8 is chapter 7 because I messed up when making the timelines. This is another one where like not a lot really happened event-wise during this map. No one died, no big fights happened. Everything kind of went according to plan for the most part. There was that one bit where I accidentally rescue dropped a guy when I absolutely did not intend to, and I had to improvise, but nothing came of it, so. If we're going back to the whole thing about smaller maps being easier to edit, this map, it's not huge, but it is smaller. It is bigger than the previous chapter. So I had a very similar, like, sneaky Hector move type of deal right here, where it transfers from end of player phase here to beginning of player phase the next turn. But the thing is, if you actually zoom out on the timeline, these two aren't in sync. Like, just this, you can see Hector's right here, like on the screen. Like, I actually have a system for this, where this dot I use to track the location of the person. So let's just, it doesn't need to be perfect since this is just an example, but Hector is here on the screen, right? So we are going to hide this clip, and you see Hector right there. Now let's see where he is at this clip. A little bit off, just a little bit, but it's noticeable. You will notice that when you're watching, especially because he takes a right turn. But yeah, just little tiny things like that. Okay, chapter 8. This is one where I always kind of knew in the back of my head that song choice was important and that not every song was going to work. This is the one, this chapter right here, is the one where I found out why not every song is going to work. This has the most jarring scene transition. My computer's slow, this is going to run poorly, but just as an example, this is what the video would look like if I hadn't changed off of the ends theme from Pokemon.
Welcome to Fire Emblem Pitfalls.
Where are we sitting?
I'll get you, bitch!
This is the part where you fall down and bleed to death.
Sorry.
It's such a it's a good song, don't get me wrong. I like it a lot. But the trumpet, the sound in the background, it doesn't work with what I'm trying to do. It's very jarring. And taking it out was probably the better call, but I really liked the intro thing with the Pokemon battle thing, and I didn't want to like think of a new intro for it, but it definitely wasn't going to work if I kept this song the whole time. Chapter 9 was one of my favorite to edit because it's another tiny map. It's got less things going on, it's very linear, making it very easy to just tunnel in on one character. In this case, it was Marcus. This actually brings me into another thing, where, with the thumbnails, this probably has my favorite thumbnail. At least it was to make, because it doesn't really show on the YouTube thing. We got the Alex Jones, we got the Joneses. I think the thumbnail might actually be my favorite part of this video. It was really fun. This was the first time I think I got called out for being a little sneaky with the editing. I think it was actually Mecha who commented and said, "Hey, Marcus healed in the middle of the fight," which, yeah, he did, but I misinterpreted. I actually answered in a comment, and the answer I gave was wrong because I thought he was talking about something else. Marcus comes in here, he's got low health, as you might see, and then he attacks, and then the boss counterattacks, and Marcus suddenly has 26 HP. The reason for this is because I'm a coward. There wasn't even any optimization in doing this. I just like to put off things that scare me. Okay, so I actually parked Marcus right next to him and then set him up to fight on enemy phase. Don't ask me why. A crit would have killed him no matter what. But yeah, this was just a little bit of sneaky editing to make it look like I attacked on player phase, just for the sake of making it flow better. Yeah, Marcus returns fire and then kills him. And I cut that up a little bit. But that's my answer to your question. Like 2 months later, I cheated with editing. I cheat a lot with editing. No one notices though, because let's be honest, it's very hard to keep up with the pace of the videos unless you're like constantly pausing. So when I do a little sneaky edit like that, people aren't gonna notice. Chapter 11. is the highest quality one that I made. I think I can say that this is probably the highest quality thing I've put out. The intro, the way I did this was I actually I screenshot this, cut Marcus out in paint.net, and then I put him back in on a different image. I downloaded an Undertale font, I made Kishuna black and white, and I used Undyne's text pattern, text talking thing, because I used Spear of Justice for the song. Chapter 13 is honestly probably my least favorite, more recent one that I've done. You can definitely see about the time where I started freaking out because of my finals, and the way I usually do it is I will make the intro sequence like right after putting the previous one on YouTube. And this one I started working on April. So we've got this is if you couldn't tell, it's Bismix with a hammer. It's from this Fog of War thing, and it's a reference because Fog of War maps suck. And this was because I did it on, I was editing this on Easter, and I kept seeing freaking fan art of all the characters in bunny costumes, and I was like, it would be funny if that was Elliewood. So I made it Elliewood. And I even gave him a little anime blush. He's kawaii. Okay. So after this intro sequence, I was very on and off with editing this for like 2 days, and then I was like, you know what? I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna finish my finals, and then I'm gonna finish this. The place where I stopped editing, like for finals, was here. And then when I came back, it was this. That's why there's 2 mecha lines in a row. And then they have very different connotations, and it's kind of jarring.
I'll take you all on!
But yeah. Anyways, that's kind of my editing process behind the videos. I'm also going to take a minute to talk about my thumbnails, because, I mean, I think they've improved as much as anything else, as you can see. And this was the first time I actually put effort into making one. This is the most recent time I put, like, a lot of effort into making it. But yeah, the way I make it is I go into paint.net, and it's actually, these are pretty flat, for the most part. Like, if you saw this, you'd be like, okay, this was made by a toddler. And then I just kind of go in, color it in with a black marker, lower the opacity until it looks decent, and then, boom, you get a thumbnail. It's pretty easy. The Wokai effect is generally what's it called? A fragment blur over a Gaussian blur. I could talk, oh, there's one more thing. Say I wanted to cut out heads. Cutting out heads is actually super easy in paint.net, but people are really bad at it for some reason. Just get an eraser, put it at max hardness, make it a little bit bigger. And you can go in, and as long as you've got a fairly steady hand, it's very easy to just cut out the parts that you don't need. So if I want a still of Felix's head, I can just cut out this. Oops. Generally, I'll put on like Netflix or something in the background while I'm working on this, since it's pretty slow, kind of tedious work. And it's honestly, it looks a lot more tedious than it is. In this, it kind of requires a little bit of an artist's eye, not too much, but like you'll have to make shot calls on what you can and can't afford to lose. Like removing that hair right there is gonna make the whole thing look a lot better, as you can see. Yeah, it's a pretty easy process. So yeah. That's my whole editing process. I hope if you were looking for some help with editing, this was helpful to you. And if you just wanted to get a better view of how I put these together, I hope you enjoyed. I am planning on starting my 3 Houses playthrough soon. You want me to go ahead and start on the 3 Houses thing sometime in like, not soon. I'm definitely gonna need like a little bit of time while I'm at home with my family to get everything together. And I haven't finished setting up the playthrough. But if you want me to start the 3 Houses thing while I'm still doing Hector Hard Mode, let me know. If not, I'll probably just finish up Hector Hard Mode before moving into 3 Houses. We'll find out. Thank you for watching. Thank you for supporting me. Thank you for being so positive as well. The sheer amount of positivity has been insane to me. Like, I expected people to be a lot more, like, I don't know, mean-spirited. Everyone's been super nice, which is super reassuring. So thank y'all. Have yourselves a good one.